Welcome to Toffee Blue View, your source for all things Everton. Gerry here, Thomas, Terry joining me as well. And we need to talk about Jordan Pickford. Not as ironclad or strong of a season as it was last year. From his rugby tackle in the last match and making faces at the stands, walking off the field as though he just couldn't be arsed. And he's had a lot of errors this season. All right, he just has. There have been a lot of mistakes by him this season. What are we to make of Pickford at this moment, Terry? It's kind of a weird thing because I was sort of willing to overlook some things going into this one, but this was a big warning sign for me as far as maturity goes. How are you feeling about him? And is this one of those things where maybe he'll see what he did wrong and wise up, or is this is the kind of thing that could signal a decline?
I mean, I hope he learns from it. He needs to get back to basics. I think the lad's ego has run away with him this season. He had a massive World Cup, and he obviously got himself on the footballing map, so to speak. But I think he's let that go to his head ever since. I mean, I'm not even going to criticise him for the Derby goal in our Anfield. The game was lost on that mistake, but that's a mistake. That can happen any time. That's nothing to do with his attitude. That's nothing to do with his mentality. It's just a mistake. The Newcastle game and others this season, like the thing with it was against Tottenham where he ran and kicked it against Zuma and cost us the goal. There's been a lot of that this season where he's too erratic. I think he thinks he's the finished article now because his status is so high, and he's not. He needs. I honestly have got to the point now where because he had such a high profile bad game, that the press reaction here has been, if Gareth Southgate is picking players based on form, can he really pick Pickford at the minute as the England #1? And some people are saying, oh yeah, he's earned that right, and to stay in the team. And others say, oh no, he needs to come on. I would actually prefer him to be dropped as the England #1 keeper at the minute, because I think that kind of thing could bring him crashing back down to earth and basically give him the reality check he needs to go, oh, maybe I need to get my head straight and put a run of performances together again like I have done previously. He reminds me a lot of David James back when he was the England keeper. He swung from the ridiculous to the spectacular. It was just some games you couldn't get past him with. You could have all the ball. You just, no matter how many times you had shots at goal, it was staying out. And some games you'd have David James's team, whoever that may be, would have all the ball and not have to defend at all, except one moment where he completely mess it up and it'd be in the net. And Pickford's in danger of turning into that again. So a super erratic, super showy keeper where he makes these spectacular saves but drops things when he catches them and rugby tackles players to try and get himself out of a mistake. I think the lad needs to remember that he's the Everton keeper first and foremost. He's not the England keeper first and foremost. He's not this star that he seems to think he is. The head movements and that to the Newcastle fans. He's made a game all about himself at the weekend. Like in the last video, Thomas touched on it. He made the game not Everton versus Newcastle. It was Pickford versus the Gallowgate end. It was like that's not what you want a player to be doing. And he's not a kid. He's 25 now. We bought him at 23, and he's had 2 seasons and a World Cup at the club now. He should be getting more mature, not less mature, and that's what I feel like he's doing. I feel like he's got an inflated ego. He's got a big head, and he needs to basically humble himself and get back to what made him, the player that we bought in the first place. Needs to go back to basics, because right now, I just before I finish up as well, I'm not suggesting he needs selling or replacing or anything like that. I think that's a little bit extreme. You can't just do that every time players have a bad game. But he definitely needs to wise up, because he's not this superstar that he seems to be behaving like at the minute. He's an Everton player. He's one of the more big name Everton players, but he needs to act like that. He needs to take on a certain amount of responsibility and, dare I say it, leadership in the team. If he wants to be what he thinks he is, he needs to prove it week in and week out. He's not the finished article. He's got a lot to learn still.
I'm trying to decide if there's a lot to add to that. Thomas, I do have a question for both you guys in a minute. Thomas, I want you to go ahead and comment first, though, and then I'll go into the question.
I'm just going to actually touch on what I said last time, Gerry, about, the emotion in a derby. But Everton Newcastle is not a derby. That's what Jordan Pickford needs to realise.
Yeah.
When it's Newcastle versus Sunderland or it's Everton versus Liverpool, you've got 11 v 11 and you've got the fans. This was Jordan Pickford versus Newcastle. Like, there's not much 3,000 Everton fans can do when Jordan Pickford gets booed every time he's on the ball. There's not much anyone could have done. He had to realise that, yeah, he's a lad from Sunderland, but he's an Everton player now. I'm repeating a bit of what you said, Terry, but you've got to pick your battles. And for some reason, he thought he could take on the entirety of St James's Park and the 11 Newcastle players on the pitch. He didn't have the backing to do that. In a derby, the emotions get high, but you've got everyone supporting you. We're not going to support a player hanging on to an old rivalry. Like, you don't want to see a player that, yeah, he's come from there, but you don't want to see him hung up on things that have happened in the past. He's an Everton player first and foremost now. He's not, yes, he comes from Sunderland, but he's not a Sunderland player, and he seemed to just forget that. We're not going to support someone who was so focused on a rivalry from his past club. We're not going to stand there and say, you know what, Jordan, we're going to give you all the support we can possibly give you because you deserve it. And I'm not sure if I'm going to ruin your question or here, because I think the video is about someone challenging him. I don't think Martin Stecklenburg's the kind of man who's going to support Pickford. He's not pushing him. I don't think he's got a lot of experience. He's had the World Cup final, but I don't think he is the goalkeeper that's going to support Pickford in a situation like that. And okay, he's probably a good backup goalkeeper. The backup goalkeeper is a tricky position. You've got to sign someone who's going to happy to come and just sit on the bench the majority of the time. United have Sergio Romero, Chelsea have Caballero, very good backup goalkeepers. Martin Stecklenburg is probably not the man that's going to push John Pickford, and he's probably not the man who, in a situation like yesterday, when he comes in at half-time, as you said, Terry, he's got away with something. He needs the older keeper, Martin Stecklenburg. Stecklenburg needs to get in his face and say, you've got away with that, move on and play the game for Everton, not for Sunderland.
Yeah, my issue is if that was like any other position making those mistakes like that, they would be sub next game.
Yeah, completely.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what's got me really annoyed, because we don't really have someone on the bench. I mean, are we going to roll with Steck? No, we're not going to roll with Steck. Literally, we would have to have literally Pickford. I'm trying to imagine a scenario where Pickford would actually be subbed. Right now, he would have to do a lot. The player that I'm most curious about is João Virginia. I would love to see him actually start getting a little more time coming up this summer. You know what I mean? Because at this point, we are lucky to have a veteran presence in Stecklenburg on the bench. But do you feel comfortable with him in goal ever?
Oh,
no. I feel more comfortable with him. Penalty saves. That's it. That's literally what I was going to say, Thomas. Yeah, putting him in there for penalties. But I've just seen him make so many mistakes whenever he's gotten a chance. So I think legitimate competition at the position. That was my question. And Thomas, of course, because he's intelligent and cunning, beat me to the question, beat me to the topic. So that's the thing. Competition for the position. Is that do we feel like a little bit of that is something that Pickford needs, and that's something that could just solve everything? Because is this a thing where we need to buy someone, or are we just thinking Virginia is going to be that guy? Because I've heard he looks great for U23s, but as you know, not always good indicator of whether or not they're going to do well first team. So, what do we think? Is this mysterious competition going to come from outside, or is it somebody we're just going to promote from within? Or do we just think Steck's just going to be it?
I think a competition would help any player in any position. It would always bring the best out in any player, but I don't think it's realistic. I don't think any clubs outside the top six have got two competitive keepers. Even all of them haven't got that. But yeah, there's certainly not very many clubs outside the top six who've got two viable keeper options. Most clubs now tend to go with an established number one keeper. He's the guy, and then they'll have an older head as sort of backup in case of emergency. And to be fair, when we've got one of the best keepers in the league, but he just isn't playing like that this season. We know how good he is, and we know how good he can be. I don't think there's anything wrong with the keeper we've got. We just need him to get back to what he can do rather than, be acting the way he has been. Stecklenberg, no, I wouldn't. Even after that performance, I still wouldn't roll with Stecklenberg over Pickford. I don't think keeper's the kind of position where dropping them necessarily helps. I mean, in some instances it does, but I think keeper, especially unless you were like Arsenal with Cech and Leno, when you've got two senior high-profile players, it might work then. But if you were to bring Pickford out for Stecklenberg, all you'd be doing is just waiting for Stecklenberg to make a mistake and Pickford to go straight back in anyway. So I think letting him play his way out of it, but just managing him properly. It's on Silva to get him back to how he can play. Virginia and Stecklenberg, I think for the way clubs operate, I think they're fine as understudies. You've got a young keeper and you've got an experienced keeper to back up the main guy. I think it's considering the rest of the squad that needs serious work doing to it. I think our backup keeper is low on the priority list. I mean, I'd be very surprised if one was to come in just because money's a thing. I think unless we could get someone for free who'd be a steal, or someone from abroad who'd cost next to nothing, who's been studied and we've stolen a march on it, I don't know. But I can't see it happen. I just don't think it's something that Premier League clubs outside of a very, very select few do, have two top keepers.
What about the Spurs model, in that they brought in Vorm, who was a player who he had a little bit of Premier League experience, but I don't know if everybody would say he was just he was a young talent they brought in to be their backup, That's why, I don't know, the idea of having your second string be somebody who's not going to play a lot, but somebody with a little bit of encouragement could feasibly be a first string keeper. That's why the João Virginia thing just makes me think. The idea that, he may not get to play much, but he'll get to play, he'll get some experience beforehand. And then when you bring him in, you don't bring him in with the intention of, hey, he's going to take over the position right now. I always thought like some of these people that they'd be bringing in would be young players who are going to be really like starving for minutes. And they may not be as established, but they're talent, and they'll be getting minutes gradually. I don't know. I realize that's a lack of experience and it's a risk, but I mean, it's your backup. You know what I mean? And there's talent there. I don't know.
Well, we've had it in Koeman's first season where we had two senior keepers of sort of equal standing, where we had Stecklenberg, but obviously a couple of years younger, and Joel Robles. So I don't think it really made much of a difference. We didn't have a senior keeper. We had just one for a while, then the other, and it didn't really make the other one play any better. I mean, obviously the two of them.
That's a pretty fair point, Terry.
It didn't make either of them up their game where they couldn't be dropped. Both of them got a lot of minutes because neither one of them could establish themselves. I don't know. I think if you spend the amount of money we've spent on Pickford and put a big investment in, who was when we bought him and still is, I suppose, a young keeper, he's there for the long term. He's been bought as Everton's keeper, so you just need to work with him and get him back to the best version of himself rather than the sort of like half version we're getting at the minute. Because he is a top quality keeper when his head's on straight, but as on Saturday his head was not on straight.
I agree completely. I don't think we're going to get in a goalkeeper who's actually going to challenge for the position, but I don't think the backup keeper that we've got is actually achieving much. I don't think Stecklenberg's the kind of guy that's actually going to get into Pickford's face and tell him that he's making mistakes and needs to calm down. He seems just kind of, obviously I don't know Martin Stecklenburg, but he doesn't seem like the kind of character that's going to be, he's going to challenge Pickford. He's going to say, you're making a mess of it. You just need to calm down because you're a very talented keeper. And I think with Martin Stecklenburg as a backup goalkeeper doesn't work because he's not a bad goalkeeper by any chance. I don't think he's of the standard necessary. And I also don't think he's a very good keeper to kind of guide a younger player. And I think maybe in Jordan Pickford's case, I think when you're an outfield player, we've got the leaders, we've got Baines, Jagielka, Coleman, the fundamental players who can get in your face and say, you need to change this, you need to change that, because they're outfield players. I think as a goalkeeper, Pickford needed to hear it from a goalkeeper that he needed to calm down. I'm not sure how much an outfield player would have affected him, but I don't think Stecklenburg is the kind of keeper that's actually going to challenge him. But I think he needs a goalkeeper that's going to, with a lot of experience. And Stecklenburg's had a lot of experience, but he's never played consistently at a top club. And obviously that's very difficult to get, but you just need a player that's going to challenge him, not necessarily of quality and not necessarily challenge him on the pitch, but challenge him mentally. Like, you need to start pulling it together or you're going to be costing the team. And I think we need that desperately. Not desperately, as Terry said, it's nowhere near the priorities. And I think we're lucky that we do have a keeper with some experience, but I don't think Stecklenburg's the kind of character that's actually going to challenge Pickford in any way.
Yeah. The thing is, at this point, what would it take for Pickford to actually see the bench? And the fact that it would take severe behavior on his part, that gives him a safety net. It gives him now there's one thing to think, oh, I'm free to make mistakes. I can do that. The confidence from a manager is important. You want your players to feel confident, to play with a certain swagger and almost arrogance to where they can make mistakes. But at the same token, you don't want them to feel bulletproof. That's my thing right now with Pickford. I feel like he almost thinks, hey, I'm the number one here. And just the idea that he can be replaced. I feel like he needs to be aware of that. It reminds me of, I realize this is only one time, we haven't really dealt with this a lot, but it reminds me a little bit of the Lukaku situation, where Lukaku almost was like, well, of course they're going to start me. And he could just sit there and go talk trash about the club whenever he wanted to. Of course he's going to come back and start. He can do whatever. He could go on a big run, big slump. Of course he's going to start. So that kind of, I don't know. I don't like the idea of certain players being bulletproof. And I don't know that Silva likes that either. So it's something to pay attention to, guys. I think our concerns are not unwarranted. I think we have a reason for those concerns. So, all right, let's move on and talk about leaders. Next segment's about leadership. So we'll see how that works. Anyway, if you've been digging our videos, please subscribe to the Toffee Blues YouTube channel. We'd sincerely appreciate it. If you want more Thomas, he does some Football Manager videos here on the channel. So you should check out that. Additionally, he does content for the Toffee Blues website, and he does social media for the Toffee Blues during games and whatnot. So look for him. But also keep an eye out for Terry, Liverpool Echo fan Gerry. His Twitter will tell you when he's going to be there. All right? We got to move on to talking about leadership, because apparently everybody is talking about that. So let's go. All right. Bye.